So we're here today continuing our conversation with Will Lestrange, and we're going to focus in on earth acupuncture and geopathic stress during this conversation. But before we get started with that, I do want to make sure that you hit that subscribe button, which is right there, according to which device you're at, and hit subscribe. That way you can make sure you catch every episode of the show and you don't miss any of the information you can certainly use to better yourself and your life. But let's continue on talking about all of that. You know, as always, down below you can click the link, hit us up on our Facebook page, fengshui.com/FengShuiTV, or our website, FengShui-it.com. That's a mouthful. Say that 3 times fast, right? So let's continue on with our conversation with Will. So Will, again, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And I want to dive right in and talk about some really cool things that you do, because you do a lot of really cool things in your Feng Shui practice that go outside of the regular stuff that some of us Feng Shui consultants do, some of the things that we do. And one of the things that you do is you focus on the outside of building structures a little bit with things that, I'm not going to say a little different, but it's some pretty complicated stuff that you're doing. So, and you're going to say it's easy, but I think it's some pretty detailed stuff. I mean, it's not a lot of people, even across our country, that do a lot with earth acupuncture and geopathic stress. Sure. It sounds kind of like a foreign concept. So let's start off by just really talking about and explaining to our audience, what is earth acupuncture?
What is earth acupuncture? Right. Well, earth acupuncture is a technique that is applied to deal with a problem that occurs in the environment. And that problem is really to do with a disturbance to the electromagnetic frequency that comes out of the earth. So just like gravity that's here, present all the time,
right?
And we know that comes from external force from out there.
Right.
We have also another phenomena, which we know that the center of the earth is a big magnet, it's magnetic, right. And there's a frequency that comes off of that, which is an electromagnetic frequency. And it's about 7.83 hertz. Now that's the bit of physics that's in there, okay. Which, guess what, is the same frequency as a healthy brainwave. So as human beings have evolved on the planet, and all life forms have evolved on the planet, they're in harmony with that natural frequency of the planet. So like the pulse of the planet, if you like, right. That's what it's pulsing at. Now sometimes we get disturbances or distortions to that frequency. And when that happens, things don't go well. Organic life doesn't thrive. We get plants will wilt and fade, and they're not healthy. And it's the same for all life. Well, not all life forms, because insects do quite well on it, and right. Microorganisms do well on it. Right. But for humans and animals, we don't thrive when there's this distortion. And it just so happens your home could be built over one of those locations, over one of those zones where the frequency has gone bad.
Wow.
And if that's in the home, then you're going to have some problems showing up in the home. It can be to do with your health, it can be to do with your mental state, a whole bunch of things which we can get into a little bit later. But earth acupuncture is the process of detecting where those sick areas are in the environment. And I say sick, the ones that have gone off frequency, we can detect it and then apply a technique which is very similar to acupuncture in the body. And this is why it's called earth acupuncture, is that you are literally acupuncturing the earth to release this sick energy, to release this frequency that's gone off, and then retune it back into a harmonious state. It's like tuning 2 guitar strings. When you get them back into tune again, it feels right. And if you listen to a guitarist play and he's out of tune, it's kind of done. You hear it, oh, right. It's out of tune. You want it to come into tune. Right. And it's the same when we're in a home like this. It can feel like it's slightly off. And because no one really knows about this, it's not very widespread as a knowledge, then, like we know about radon, for instance, right. Radon gas, but this is really connected to radon. Okay. Often you can clear radon by doing the earth acupuncture.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You don't need to go and put one of those expensive kind of radon mitigation systems in. You know, you can use the earth acupuncture to do it.
Wow.
So that's earth acupuncture. Its origins come from China again. Okay. Part of the Feng Shui, it wasn't Feng Shui per se, but it was an associated practice. Even way back 4,000 years ago, the first emperor of the first dynasty in China decreed that nobody could build a home under his rulership if it was built on what he called the claw of the dragon. Okay. Which sounds a bit kind of, kind of Dungeons and Dragons or mystical or
Sure,
something.
sure.
But really, that was just the language of the time. The claw of the dragon means something that would harm you, which was just this energy in the environment. So it's always been around. It's a natural phenomena. And it can also be caused from man-made phenomena to do with like power stations or other things that disturb the frequency of the earth, like quarrying or mining, this type of thing. Or bombs going off, explosions can cause a problem there. But, and it's a really fascinating subject because it's also tied in with our brain, because we're in this electromagnetic frequency. It's a little bit like having your cell phone, right? We can't see this frequency, but we use the cell phone and we communicate with each other all the time.
Right.
But the thing that's actually making this work, we have no idea what's going on. In fact, these frequencies are passing through your liver and my kidneys right now, and we don't even know about it.
That feels offensive.
Yeah, no, well, it kind of, I'd rather that didn't happen, right? And that's kind of the price that we pay for the technology. But for some people, that can be a real problem. So that spills over into EMF pollution, electromagnetic caused by the phone rather than geomagnetic problems.
And we're going to talk about
We'll
that.
talk about
we'll
that
talk about
later,
that a little
yeah,
later in
sure.
the conversation. And so when we're talking about this notion of earth acupuncture, we're treating the energy lines, basically. Well, let's back up a little bit for the audience and kind of talk about the notion of what is energy, earth energy lines. Like how are they located?
Right, okay.
And where are they? And is this like latitude and longitude lines or what?
Okay. Well, the ones that we call let's talk about the word geopathic stress to begin with.
Okay.
This is the umbrella term that's given to this whole phenomena of earth energies.
Okay.
Geopathic stress, the word geopathic, geo means of the earth, and pathic, it comes from the Greek word pathos, suffering. Okay, so suffering of the earth. That's really what the umbrella term applies to. And so, and we feel it. The earth doesn't necessarily feel itself suffering, in terms of a consciousness, but we experience that with the earth feeling like it's suffering, or we're suffering in the presence of that frequency that's gone off. And so, how do we detect those lines? Well, you can just feel it in your body. If you know what the feeling is, it's like saying what's hot or what's cold.
You feel it.
You feel it, right? And you have a
hot.
sense of identifying it. So it's relative to something.
Okay.
So if you go to a place that feels really good and regenerative and fresh and life-giving, and then you go to a place where you feel very different to that. Now that could be caused by other things like lack of air, good clean air in a building, or lack of light, or it could just feel oppressive, bad design. But then there's another bit that's slightly complex that comes in, and that's this frequency that's coming out of the earth. So how do we find it? Well, traditionally in China they would use the compass, not the compass that spins around in the direction and says, oh, there's north over there. Okay. They would use the Lopan compass, and they would walk across the surface of the earth, and they'd be watching the needle not spinning round and round because they're still going in the same direction. So they could be walking due north, but what they're looking for is the needle starts to bob up and down, because the needle is electromagnetically charged, and it starts to respond to changes in the electromagnetic frequency as you're walking across a surface. So you can read it on a very subtle device like this. You can find it there. The other way of doing it is using dowsing rods, a pendulum or dowsing rods. You'll be walking along across an area, and suddenly your body will tense, because the rods don't move on their own.
Gotcha.
I move the rods, but I'm not really thinking about moving the rods. I'm just keeping my mind open, saying, show me where that change of energy is, and I'm just saying, show me where that change is. Notice where the change of energy is. And the minute you go into it, you can train yourself so that your body, as you feel that little bit of tension, your wrist will change, and so it's a bit like a speedometer on a car, right? Right. It tells you you're going 60 miles an hour, but you could train yourself to look out the window and go, oh, I'm going 58 miles an hour, and now I'm going 60. It's just a matter of training and sensitizing yourself.
And farmers use dowsing rods, like they were like the bigger ones, right? Like
you can use a split twig like this, and divining for finding water.
For like a well.
Well, looking for
my grandfather.
Everybody's grandfather used to do it, right? So,
right.
So that's it. That's why I grew up in England. My grandfather could do this, and they go out to find water.
My grandfather would look for a well.
Exactly. That was a really important that was an important job at one time.
Sure.
Before we had piped water, you traditionally wouldn't build a house where you couldn't find a source.
Find water.
You build the well first, then put the house next to it.
Right.
And so from the dowsing tradition, so it did naturally cross over. It wasn't just in China where this was observed. It was happening here in the West as well. Whilst looking for water, you were sensitive, looking for other deposits like gold or precious metals, or even trying to just find something that you'd lost. If you have an energetic connection with it, good dowsers can find out where you've lost your car keys.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I can't do that. I've tried and I've tried.
Can you do that?
No. I just,
so when I lose something, I can call you and go,
no, I
hey,
need
Will,
one of
can
those
you?
little bleepers that go off now. I need some technology. But yeah, you can detect it through dowsing rods, and we did some of that out in the environment here.
We did, because we actually found a spot that had some geopathic stress, and that was really cool. Let's show some of the B-roll of that,
Sure
of
thing,
you
okay.
going through. And so when we see you actually walking, what are you doing? I mean, because you said that your hands did not actually, you did turn it, but you're not consciously going like, okay, I'm going to turn it right now, I'm going to turn it right now. You can just feel the kind of shift in the environment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed with this, because you've taught me that we kind of look for certain things in these areas, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We're going to talk about this, but one of the interesting things I noticed is how dead everything was in this area.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the landscape was just
Sure.
dead. I mean,
Well, again, this was a really interesting case study because, for a start, we've got the electromagnetic frequency that comes out of the Earth here is slightly disturbed. Now, we've also got a really large cell phone mast just behind this building, which is, if you think of it, it is like a huge acupuncture needle stuck into the Earth,
right.
Stuck into the body of the Earth. But it's also got a whole bunch of technology and microwaves and all sorts, the cell phone signals that are going through there. That's not natural to the Earth frequency.
Right.
That's a man-made frequency that's at a
It was convenient to put that tower
yeah,
there.
absolutely, and that's what we have to live with in the modern world, right? But there is a price to pay for that because in combination, the disturbance in this particular environment is a combination of, in this case, it's to do with a mineral deposit. And the same with radon, is depleted uranium, and the radioactivity comes off of that as a gas, and that's how it gets into your home, comes up through the basement, into the house, and it's trapped in the house. Same thing here, we have an electromagnetic frequency that's being given off by either deep underground water, because the water is pressurized in big aquifers, big underground lakes, and the water is still moving through it. And as it's being moved, electrons are being stripped off of that water and then turn into electromagnetic frequencies that come up through the Earth. And they'll travel, they're detectable, for a long way up into the sky. And in fact, they leave the Earth, they go up, and then they hit the ionosphere, that boundary that's on the outside of the Earth, go up, and they bounce back down again. So there's this electromagnetic field that's around the Earth. Now that's sort of the big science around it.
Sure.
What we're concerned with is what happens to us in the present.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So how does a person know when they're feeling the effects of this stuff?
Right, okay. So, I would say if you're in a home where where life feels difficult, just from a long view, like you're just struggling, and it's been like that for a long time, and you could feel like there's no one thing you could put your finger on, but life just feels difficult. If you've other early symptoms that are, I'd say, early warning signs would be if you've been ill and you're slow to recover. It just takes forever to get well. If you're always getting colds and just niggly little things like that, and so like your immune system is slightly depressed. Now this could be you have a really healthy diet, you exercise, you do all what appears to be the right things, but things just aren't progressing back into an area of wellness for you. If you've got kids who sleep, if you or your children sleepwalk, with children that suffer a lot of night terrors and nightmares.
Really?
Yeah. Bedwetting with children is often associated with this. In more serious advanced cases, we know that, what do they call it? We call it cot death in England.
Like SIDS?
SIDS, here. That's associated with it. And we know that SIDS is, one of the causes of SIDS is an overgrowth of bacteria in the gut. Well, guess what? Microbes and bacteria thrive on geopathic.
In these areas.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And like we can use geopathic stress in a constructive way. I have a colleague in Amsterdam who, in the big glass houses where they grow tomatoes, they move the beehives, because they have bees in there to pollinate, they move the beehives onto the zones where there's geopathic stress, and the bees are suddenly singing. They're happy.
They love this stuff.
They love it. And the following year, they had a bumper crop off of that because the bees were just happier, healthier, and more productive. If you want to grow really good, well, create really good compost, if you're an organic gardener, then you put your compost heap where the geopathic stress zone is, because those microbes are going to love that. They're going to break it down. Everything breaks down.
Right.
So put that in try and do something healthy in that place. We're going to start to break down. So the electromagnetic communication from our brain through to the cells in our body, which is an electromagnetic phenomena which takes place in water, basically. The conductivity of that happens down through the spinal cord, through to all the cells in the body. Now that starts to get jammed because there's a bit of static, it's off frequency. So that's why we're not getting healthy cell growth, why we're not recovering.
That's why it's so slow.
Why it can be slow.
Yeah.
Then you've got a whole other layer of things that can come in. If you've got accidents that start happening on roads where there seem to be a recurrence of accidents, just over and over and over again, you say, wow, that's a bad piece of road. And
you've got a really cool graphic that we're gonna show up for the audience. That shows about this accident kind of coming up, right?
This was created by Dr. Joseph Kopp, and this picture's been around quite a long time, and I think it does a good job. So if you look down in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the dowser. He's the guy who's stood there detecting where the lines are. And then you can see inside the house, there's a bedroom, and you can see the tracks of these sick energy lines, these geopathic stress lines, are tracking through the house. It goes across the street, through a tree, then off into the distance where there's in this case, there's a lightning storm, and there's a tree that's split. And you can actually see that there are two lines that cross there underneath that tree. Now, with lightning, that's attracted to that tree, to strike that tree, because the electromagnetic force is pulling that lightning down, and because it's going to go to Earth underneath. This would be related to a deep underground stream, a source of water. So the Earth, the electricity is going to go to the water, so it's going to go down through the tree and split and hit the tree. So we talk about lightning trees that are kind of hit more than once by lightning. This is the reason, because it's actually, there's some physics going on there. It's not just a random event. You can also see inside the house, this would be a sick bed. The lines crossing through the bed there would cause sickness to the people in the bed. You can also see a lot of, you get a lot of clues from nature. You can see the damaged growth in the hedgerow outside the house. Plants don't do well where there's geopathic stress. They wilt and they die. Trees will actually lean. If you see trees that are leaning in a really weird angle, and they're not leaning towards the natural source of light, trying to get away from the shade towards light. If they're in the middle of a field and they're just leaning at a weird angle, they're leaning because they're trying to grow off this line of geopathic stress.
Oh, wow.
And so all organic life doesn't do that well. You get cankers and these strange gnarly growths on the trees. And so you can take these cues from all around nature. So when I go into the home, I'm looking for this all the time. I'm looking for all these clues around me. And this is what we did yesterday.
Right, and we actually found dead hedges. We found a rotted tree. I mean, when you started pointing this stuff out, it was as obvious as daylight. I mean, it was just everywhere.
It's hiding in plain sight. It's there. And we're kind of used to seeing that. It doesn't sort of stand out and hit us. But when you sort of look at it and put it into conceptualize it, oh right, this is all connected.
Right.
Then you can understand.
Right. Let's pop that footage up though. I want to show everybody at home what this looks like.
Sure.
And see, I mean, this is amazing. I mean, I've seen this location a billion times. Never noticed it until you started pointing it out, and it's literally everything was dead.
Sure. And that's one of the challenges. So if this was a dwelling, we were living, well, you can see the house behind this place, right? In pretty bad shape.
Yeah, it's dilapidated.
Also,
The roof
yeah, well, you
is
can see,
caving in.
I think the tree had probably snapped at one time and fallen on the house.
Trying to get away, like,
Yeah,
please, I'd rather cut myself down.
Yeah.
Like.
And to add insult to injury, we now put this huge, great cell phone mast behind.
Right.
It's going to be very hard for this area to recover. Now, obviously, we're in the studio and we're doing okay. Here we are on this piece of land. We're okay, but if we were sleeping here full time, it would be a challenge. We'd have to find some remedies that we could help to overcome this. Just straight up earth acupuncture would be a challenge to shift all of this because of the electromagnetic.
So what can a person do, not necessarily with a huge cell phone tower, I mean, because that's pretty massive in there.
Sure.
they're kind of spread out everywhere. Most people don't have a cell phone tower in their backyard, but if I had geopathic stress in my home, what can I do in order to take care of this? I mean, do I just call you and you'll fix it for me, or?
The first thing is avoidance. So you don't want to spend prolonged period of time. So first thing is the bed. If you can move your bed to another part of the room and get off the line, that's the first thing you can do, is to move a bed, or if you have the luxury of moving to another room, to shift rooms around, then you could do that. Think about if you're upstairs and downstairs and your bed is here and there's some geopathic stress and you sit in watching your favorite chair watching TV downstairs, then 1/3 of your life is sleep and the other third of your kind of relaxation time beneath that, you're sat on geopathic stress.
So the majority of my life I'm being
you're being bathed,
right.
you know. And so there's that saying, you know, the fish isn't sick, the water's just dirty. I mean, that you're not sick, you're just in a sick environment. And so the first thing is to get off the line, avoid it if you can. That's the most important thing. The next thing is if you could actually get someone like me, you know, a professional who knows how to work with this, to then actually put some kind of remedial device into the environment that's going to help clear it.
Right, and we're going to have your information listed on our website so that people can contact you about this.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there's people all over the country, you know, dowsers, you know, the American Dowsing Association, you know, they're very skilled at doing this stuff. It's not just the Feng Shui people who do it. There are people who have been trained to do a lot of this earth energy work. It can be very helpful. And the cures can range from putting in traditionally in this culture, you would put copper rods into the ground, and that would change the relationship of the frequency around the space. People can use crystals, again. You know, even, you know, your watch works off, you know, all the computers are silicone, right? It's intelligent, it has a memory, you can program it. So crystals can help reprogram the area. Doing classical acupuncture, where we actually put a needle in and then intentionally clear this energy off, that works very well.
So the power of intention could actually clear out geopathic stress.
Yes.
Wow.
Because there's this really interesting, remember, this is electromagnetic, right? There's no heavy lifting with energy.
Right.
All right, we haven't got to pick something.
We admit that as humans.
Sure. We don't have to pick something physical up and move it over here. We just think it, you know, because there is nothing to pick up and move it. It's just the image that we have. So a lot of this clearing can be done, which is in the old days when you think about a priest coming to a home and blessing the home and something changing in the home. It's in the intention of the blessing.
Right.
You know, the blessing of the home. That works also. And so that's very powerful. And then oftentimes if I'm working in big build-up areas, office blocks, you know, you've got 22 floors of offices in the center of New York or Brooklyn or somewhere, and you've got this full of electromagnetics. It's just crazy in there. Then there are devices that we can use that are plug-in devices that you actually plug it into the outlet.
Right.
And that sends a frequency around the whole wiring loom of the place.
Of the whole place.
And it floods it with a positive vibration, which kind of doesn't make the other one go away, but it overrides it. It's just like turns the volume up.
Right.
So your favorite jam is blocking out the
so keep you a little healthier.
Yeah, right. It's one way of doing it. That's one way of doing it.
What exactly is this EMF? I mean, what is this radiation? Okay.
All right. Well, I'm not going to bore you with the physics of it because it's a bit dry and stodgy.
Okay.
Right? But just to know that there is a field, a frequency that comes off of this device, or any electrical device, there is a field that comes off it. And that field is not natural to our organic system. So we now know that people, you know, there was the police force in the north of England did a pilot scheme where they had in-ear monitoring connected to their cell phones. And a lot of the police officers started complaining about headaches, earaches, and one guy even got a brain tumor.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And so, now this isn't going to happen to everybody because everybody's different.
Right.
This is the one thing
our
with
biological composition.
Our composition, our what do you call it? Our constitution, we're different.
Right.
Our constitutional makeup, our DNA is different.
Right.
So what would get you won't get me.
I might be resistant to something that you were totally sensitive to.
So we don't have this one size fits all that's going to hurt everybody. But I think what we're going into now, the speed of, you know, how long have these things been around for?
Forever.
Well, it feels forever for you, but not long, really.
Right. Well, I was a kid when we had bag phones. Right. You know, the little leather bag ones.
But really, it's only like
but these little things.
In one generation.
Yeah.
Within 30 years, okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Easily, the 80s when these started showing up. So this is the new smoking, right?
Right.
We don't
Wow.
know.
When you say it like that, that's really kind of an eye-opener.
Right, I think this is, we just don't know what the long-term collective effect is of these devices. Now, I'm not here to tell people don't use them, because I use them all the time. My kids use them all the time.
But there's things we can do to protect ourselves, right?
Yeah, they're great. They're helpful. They make modern life move along.
Right.
Okay? But again, there's a kind of a price to pay, and we need to have an awareness around this. And so, so we need to be mindful. How much do we use it? You know, I use mine on speaker most of the time. It feels uncomfortable. I can feel my head start to get heat up, and it doesn't feel right. I can feel when I've had enough. I'm like, oh, okay. Or I'll even put it down, turn it on, and then talk to someone on speaker. So I'm not holding it. No, everybody's different. Some people can tolerate it, some people can't. But there's just all you need to know is that there is a field of radiation that comes off any device. I mean, even your food mixer. The minute you turn that on, it runs.
It's coming out, right?
Your hot, what do you call it? Your electric blanket at home. You know, some people who are unwell, they have an electric blanket, they're trying to recover, and they're slow to recover. The first thing we do is take the electric blanket away.
Right.
Use a hot water bottle,
Right, right.
You know, because that electric field is jamming against your natural organic field.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So what can a person do to protect themselves from EMFs or?
Right. Well, there are a number of devices. You can go online and find them. There's little devices you can stick onto the phone. They're normally made out of some kind of ceramic, and we know that the properties of the ceramic have a way of just changing the frequency into a more harmonious, less harmful frequency. Yeah. So you can get these little buttons that stick on the back of your phone, and that renders them a lot safer. There's a few other techniques I can show you, just DIY ones, which are going to sound totally whacked out and weird.
Well,
but
that's
they
okay.
work. But we can test you, and you'll see how they work.
Okay.
You want to do that?
Sure, I'm game.
Hey, click the link below and you'll get a chance to see how Will did muscle testing on me to show how EMFs affect the body.
And
Thank you so
again,
much.
if you have any questions for Will, we'll put his contact information, his website on our website at FengShuiItIvyEllerby.com. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned because your DIY design innovation tip on how to get restful sleep will be following.